Okay, we're going live, folks. An update on President Trump's deficit spending, how it saved the economy. And we're going to start with Professor Stephen King.
Chaos from the Trump administration.
Why is the U.S. economy still standing in the middle of tariff chaos, a war with Iran, and Trump's spending spree?
Rising a bit from its lowest level, which was about 3.25% in 2023, and is now about 4.3%. But that's pretty much the level of unemployment that America has sustained for most of the last 50 or 60 years. Booms and busts, of course, but the average comes out at about 4.5% to 5%. Performing at average levels right now in terms of the unemployment rate. In terms of inflation, of course, inflation rose dramatically during the COVID period, and it peaked at 9% back in June of 2022. Now it's running at about 3.5%. And again, despite the obsession that the central banks have about running 2% rate of inflation, the average rate of inflation for America has been about 3%, so it's running at much the same level. Now, the question is, why on earth have you got this relative stability at the moment in the middle of all the chaos being caused by Donald Trump? Because we have tariffs on, we have tariffs off, we have suddenly whacking a $100,000 bill on people immigrating into the country with the skilled visas. There's absolute chaos from the Trump administration. We have the impact of the war in Iran as well, which hasn't yet hit the shores of America, but it will. So at the moment, we've got a bit of a lull before the storm. And the intriguing reason as to why is something else that most commentators would say is a bad thing, and I'm going to say is a good thing, and that's the government deficit. This is one of the perennial points where mainstream economists differ from people like myself. They see a government deficit as a bad thing, and a deficit is going to lead to less economic activity. The basic argument you'll see in an economics textbook is if the government runs a deficit, that reduces the rate of economic growth. Now, Trump came in promising to balance the books. We have this, we may all remember Doge. Remember Doge? That was going to eliminate government debt. That was the great invention of Elon Musk. It was going to cut government spending radically and make it much more efficient. Well, Doge has come and gone, and so has Elon Musk. Well, if this video has alerted you to the fact that what you thought you knew about economics is wrong, you'll thoroughly enjoy the free book bundle that has been requested by over 5,000 people already. It's worth $50, but it's free right now. Click on the link in the description or go to stevekeen.com and click on the black button and fill in your information. In about 60 seconds, you'll get the free book bundle. And after that, if you want to study with me personally and use my proprietary software, Ravel, there'll be an invite to join that course as well.
I highly recommend that you do download the free bundle, read it, get educated, and if you're not sure about anything, ask the right questions. Costs nothing to download it, costs nothing to educate yourself. Not when you download for free.
He's come again. If you see the latest illustrations, he's turning up with Trump in international meetings again right now. But despite the claim that Trump made that he was going to get rid of the deficit, if you look at the level of government spending on a quarter-by-quarter basis, then you find that back in the second quarter of 2022, which is before Trump took office, of course, there was $151 billion surplus at that stage. If you look at what happened when Trump came into power, the deficit was getting larger. And now he's talking about an extra $500 billion for the defence budget, which is going to make the deficit larger still, et cetera, et cetera. From the perspective of mainstream economic textbooks, that's telling you that there's going to be a huge impost on the rate of economic growth because that government spending takes money away from the private sector. The private sector would normally invest in profitable enterprises, and therefore the budget deficit will reduce the rate of economic growth. Now, that's bollocks. Best way to describe it is that it's complete bollocks because the government is not borrowing money from the private sector. It's creating money for the private sector when it spends more than it takes back in taxation. And the simplest way to get this into your heads is just to consider your own deposit account at the bank, which is the way you pay your tax bill. So if the government taxes you more than it spends on you, it takes more money out of your bank account than it puts into your bank account, and therefore it reduces the amount of money you have for spending, which is likely to mean you spend less. But if the government spends more than it takes back in taxation, it puts more money into your bank account, you're more likely to spend more. So the advice from mainstream economics textbooks is the exact opposite of what happens in the real world, and it's easy to work it out when you think in terms of your own tax liabilities. You imagine if the government spent on you instead, and if you were somebody who manufactured, I don't know, drones, nuclear weapons, these strange things like that, if you benefit from that spending, then you're going to boost economic activity and employ people to do things like erect a cage fight assembly outside the White House.
Folks, this is the ironic thing behind this situation. Even though this guy spends all this money on all these nutty things, and it's not nutty. He's just doing what he wants to do on a whim at any point in time. He doesn't care about the country. He doesn't understand cause and effect. He has no understanding of cause and effect, but he is stimulating the economy. It'd be nice if that big, beautiful bill of $4.5 trillion, instead of going to the top 1 and 10%, went creating programs for people that need it so that they can work and make a living and health care. That would have been much better for the economy. But, Donald Trump. Back to Mr. Keene.
So the spending that he's doing is actually stimulating the economy. And this is one of the ironic elements of comparing mainstream thought to what Trump is doing. Half the time he'll come out mouthing and saying we've got to get rid of the government deficit, I'm a far better manager than anybody else, etc., etc. What he's actually doing is spending, because he's now in charge of America, his whims become what money gets performance into an extremely bad one. The thing that matters most performance into an extremely bad one. The thing that matters most to working class and middle class Americans is the employment rate. And the employment rate is being sustained at a relatively high level, largely when you take a look at the spending because of what's happening with AI, partially. So AI data centers everywhere are requiring you to employ technicians to install and build those data centers, etc., etc. So that's one stimulus coming from the private sector. And then Trump's administration, by spending up to $1 trillion more than he said he'd spend in budget deficits, with $500 billion extra going to the army, allegedly, in the next budget, that is pouring a huge amount of cash into the economy. So the combination of private sector investment for data centers and AI 4 years, and certainly under Trump it's rising, and the inflation rate was 3% back in June of 2023, and now it's 3.4%. There's no trend to accelerating inflation. If it wasn't for all the chaos externally, you'd look at this and think this is a pretty good set of economic numbers. The trouble is they're dependent upon the flow of production being able to be sustained as it has in the past, and Trump's stupid war with Iran is going to mean that is no longer possible once the supply shortages generated by that war start hitting the American economy, and they're likely to start hitting it in the next 3 to 6 months.
So there you go, folks. As I've been saying, this war in Iran is going to cause a big problem worldwide. And you've just witnessed how running deficits, Trump's got a huge deficit. That $4.5 trillion, just 10% of that would have been $450 million or billion-dollar deficit for Canada. So you have to understand how deficit spending works and helps the economy, and get away from this Milton Friedman way of economic theory. So questions, comments, throw in the chat. Let me know what you think. And let go of pain and suffering. Let's move to a position of benevolence, harmony, and abundance. It starts with you by being kind to yourself. You can't expect other people to do it for you. Create the intention, take action, and watch change happen. Love and peace to everyone. Take care. Talk to you all soon.